They laughed at her, saying she was too big for love. But when the veil was lifted, the truth left everyone speechless. What happened next changed everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. Martha Wilson stood before the mirror in her modest room, pinning back a strand of chestnut hair that had escaped her simple bun. At 25, she'd long since accepted her place in the small town of Red Rock, Wyoming Territory, 1879. The reflection that stared back showed a woman with kind eyes and a full figure that had earned her countless whispers behind raised hands. "Martha, dear." The supply wagons arrived, her mother called from downstairs. "Could you help unload the fabrics for the shop?" "Coming, mother," Martha replied, smoothing her apron over her worn blue dress. The Wilson family owned the only dress shop in Red Rock, catering to the wives and daughters of ranchers, miners, and the occasional passing traveler. Martha had a gift for sewing, her fingers nimble despite their size, creating garments that made other women feel beautiful while she herself had grown accustomed to the sidelong glances and backhanded compliments. My, what a shame such skilled hands belonged to someone so substantial, Mrs. Henderson had once remarked while being fitted for a new Sunday dress. The bell above the shop door jingled as Martha descended the stairs. The late summer heat poured in with two men, old Mr. Gunderson making his monthly delivery, and beside him, a stranger Martha had never seen before. "Morning, Wilsons," Mr. Gunderson greeted. "This here's James Sullivan, newly arrived from Colorado, taking over the Sullivan Ranch from his late uncle." The stranger removed his hat, revealing sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a cloudless Wyoming sky. "Ma'am," he nodded to Mrs. Wilson before his gaze settled on Martha. Unlike the typical darting glances she received from most men, his eyes remained steady, a half-smile playing on his lips. "James is looking to spruce up his uncle's place," Mr. Gunderson continued. "Thought you ladies might help with some curtains and such." "Of course," Mrs. Wilson said warmly. "Martha, show Mr. Sullivan our fabric selection while I help with the unloading." Martha felt her cheeks warm as she guided the tall cowboy to the shelf of fabrics. "What sort of curtains were you thinking, Mr. Sullivan?" "James, please." His voice carried the gentle drawl of someone raised further south. "And I confess, I know nothing about curtains. My uncle lived like a hermit for 20 years. The place needs a woman's touch." "I see." Martha unrolled a bolt of calico. "This would brighten the kitchen nicely." As she worked, showing him various fabrics, she became aware of his eyes on her hands rather than the materials. "You have remarkable hands," he commented. Martha tucked them into her apron pockets reflexively. "They're rather large." "Strong," he corrected. "Capable. My mother had hands like yours. Could break a wild horse in the morning and stitch the finest quilt you've ever seen by afternoon." Something in his tone made Martha look up and meet his gaze. "Will you be staying in Red Rock long?" she asked, changing the subject. "For good, if all goes well. The ranch needs work, but it's good land." He selected several fabrics. "I'll take these, and perhaps—" he hesitated. "Perhaps you might advise me further once I've gotten settled. The house truly is in dismal condition." After he'd paid and left, Martha's mother approached with a knowing smile. "He seemed quite taken with you." Martha shook her head. "He was being polite, that's all." "I've seen polite, dear. That wasn't it." Later that evening, while closing up shop, Martha spotted Ruth Montgomery and her friends across the street, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Ruth, with her tiny waist and golden curls, had been the belle of Red Rock since childhood. "Did you see him?" Ruth's voice carried clearly. "The new rancher? Father says he's bought twice the cattle old Sullivan ever had. I'll be paying him a welcome visit tomorrow with my apple pie." Martha turned away, a familiar ache settling in her chest. Men like James Sullivan didn't notice women like her, not when creatures like Ruth Montgomery existed in the world. Yet as she blew out her lamp that night, she found herself remembering the steady blue of his eyes and the way he'd looked at her hands, not with mockery, but with something that had felt strangely like admiration. 3 weeks passed before Martha saw James Sullivan again. Autumn had begun painting the aspen trees gold when the shop bell rang and he entered. Hat in hand, his shirt cleaner than before, but still bearing the dust of ranch work. "Miss Wilson," he greeted, a smile warming his weathered face. "The curtains look mighty fine. Transformed the place." Martha nodded, pleased despite herself. "I'm glad they suit." "They do, but I find myself in need of more help." He glanced around the empty shop before continuing. "The truth is, I'm hosting some potential cattle buyers from Cheyenne next week, and the house is—" He trailed off, looking embarrassed. "Not ready for company," Martha offered. "A diplomatic way of putting it." He chuckled. "I was hoping you might consider coming out to advise me. I'd pay for your time, of course." Before Martha could respond, her mother emerged from the back room. "What a splendid idea. Martha has Thursdays free from shop duties. Don't you, dear?" Martha felt her face flush. "Mother, perfect," James said. "I could send my wagon for you Thursday morning, if that's agreeable." Trapped by her mother's expectant gaze, Martha nodded. "That would be fine, Mr. Sullivan." "James," he corrected again, placing his hat back on his head. "Until Thursday, then." Thursday dawned clear and cool. Martha had selected her best day dress, a deep green that her mother always said brought out the amber flecks in her brown eyes. She'd also packed her sewing basket and several fabric samples, unsure exactly what James might need. The ranch wagon arrived promptly at 9, but instead of a hired hand, James himself sat holding the reins. He hopped down to help her up, his hand warm and calloused against hers. "I hope you don't mind the company," he said as they set off. "It's a fine morning for a drive." The Sullivan Ranch lay 7 miles outside town, nestled against the foothills with a creek running along its eastern boundary. The house itself was larger than Martha had expected, a 2-story structure of solid timber with a wide front porch. "My uncle built it when he thought he'd have a family," James explained as he helped her down. "Instead, he lived here alone, filling just 2 rooms with his belongings." Inside, Martha saw what he meant. The front parlor and kitchen showed signs of recent cleaning and the new curtains she'd helped select, but the rest of the house had the neglected feel of rooms long unused. "It's a fine home," she said, turning slowly to take in the craftsmanship of the staircase banister. "Just needs some care. And a woman's touch, like I said." James watched her carefully. "Would you like some coffee before we begin?" Over coffee served in mismatched cups, James explained his situation. "The cattle buyers are bringing their wives. I've been told that makes a difference, that how a man keeps his home speaks to how he manages his business." Martha nodded. "People do make such judgments. I thought perhaps you could help me arrange things properly. The furniture's all good, just—" He gestured vaguely. "Placed by a man who lived alone," Martha finished with a smile. They spent the morning rearranging the parlor, dining room, and study. Martha showed him how to position chairs to encourage conversation, how to display the few family photographs he possessed, and which surfaces most needed the touch of a tablecloth or runner. At midday, he surprised her with a simple but thoughtfully prepared lunch of cold chicken, red, and early apples from his tree. "You cook as well as ranch?" she asked, impressed. "A man who can't feed himself doesn't last long out here," he replied. "Though I'll admit my skills are limited." As they ate on the porch, enjoying the view of distant mountains, a rider approached, Ruth Montgomery astride her father's best mare, a covered basket balanced carefully before her. "Yoo-hoo, Mr. Sullivan," she called, her voice musical. She pulled up short when she spotted Martha, surprise flickering across her perfect features before she composed herself. "Why, Martha Wilson, what brings you all the way out here?" "Miss Wilson has been kind enough to help me prepare for some business guests," James explained, rising to his feet. "How thoughtful." Ruth's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I've brought you that apple pie I promised, still warm from the oven." James thanked her politely and invited her to join them, but Ruth declined, claiming her father was expecting her back. Before departing, she leaned from her saddle toward James. "The harvest dance is Saturday next at the town hall. "I do hope you'll attend," she said, her voice honey-sweet. After Ruth departed, an awkward silence fell between Martha and James. Finally, he turned to her with a quizzical expression. "Is the harvest dance a significant event in Red Rock?" Martha laughed despite herself. "Only the most important social gathering of the season. Everyone attends." "Including you?" he asked. "I help serve refreshments with Mother," she admitted. "We provide the tablecloths and decorations from the shop." James nodded thoughtfully. "But you don't dance?" Martha brushed invisible crumbs from her skirt. "I haven't been asked in some years." "That seems a terrible waste," he replied quietly. The afternoon passed quickly as they tackled the upstairs rooms, preparing 2 bedchambers for his guests. As the sun began its descent, James drove her back to town, their conversation flowing easily about books they'd read and places they'd seen. At her door, he hesitated before saying, "I wonder if you might return on Monday. There's still much to do, and I value your judgment." Martha found herself agreeing before she properly considered it. Something about James Sullivan made her feel both completely at ease and intensely alive in a way she'd never experienced. That night, as she prepared for bed, her mother knocked softly before entering with a knowing smile. "You were gone quite a long while today," she observed. "The house needed considerable work," Martha replied, avoiding her mother's gaze. And the owner? Did he need considerable work as well?" "Mother, I'm merely asking what any mother would. James Sullivan seems a good man, and he looks at you in a way men rarely look at unmarried women of your age." Martha turned away. "Don't be ridiculous. Ruth Montgomery rode out specially to invite him to the harvest dance." "And did he seem eager to accept?" Martha paused, remembering his indifferent response. "Not particularly." Her mother patted her hand. "Then perhaps you should prepare to be surprised. My dear Doc," by the 3rd Monday of Martha's visits to the Sullivan Ranch, whispers had begun circulating through Red Rock. Martha ignored them as best she could, focusing instead on the genuine friendship that had developed between her and James. Each visit revealed more of his character, his dry humor, his kindness to his ranch hands, his intelligence that belied his modest education. Today they were in the kitchen, where Martha was showing him how to properly serve a formal dinner. "The glasses go here, and the plates must be warmed before serving," she explained, arranging the table. "I'm more accustomed to eating from a tin plate by the campfire," James admitted. "This all seems needlessly complicated." Martha smiled. "Perhaps, but your cattle buyers from Cheyenne will expect certain standards." "And what do you expect, Martha?" he asked suddenly, his blue eyes intent on hers. The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean? From life? From ... He hesitated. "From a man, perhaps." Martha's hand stilled on the tablecloth. No man had ever asked her such a thing before. Most people in town had long since assigned her the role of spinster shopkeeper, her future as fixed as the mountains on the horizon. "I've never given it much thought," she said carefully. "I think you have," James countered gently. "I see how you arrange things, how you notice what brings comfort and beauty. You think about how people feel in a space, what makes them welcome." Martha found herself unable to meet his gaze. "Those are just practical concerns. They're evidence of someone who cares deeply," he said, stepping closer. "Someone who deserves care in return." Before Martha could respond, the sound of approaching hooves interrupted them. James frowned slightly before excusing himself to see who had arrived. Through the window, Martha saw him greeting Sheriff Davis and another man she didn't recognize. Their conversation appeared serious, with James repeatedly shaking his head and gesturing emphatically. After several minutes, the men departed, and James returned looking troubled. "Is everything all right?" Martha asked. "Cattle rustlers working the area," he explained. "They've hit 3 ranches north of here. Sheriff wants us all on alert." "That sounds dangerous." "It's part of ranching life," he said, then forced a smile. Now, where were we with this formal dinner nonsense? They continued their preparations, but something had changed. James seemed distracted, his earlier warmth replaced with a pensive distance. When it came time for him to drive her home, the conversation remained polite but superficial. At her door, however, he surprised her by taking her hand. "The harvest dance is this Saturday," he said. Martha nodded. "Mother and I will be there early to arrange the tables." "I was hoping," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "that you might say the dance for me." Martha stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You want to dance with me?" "Very much so." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "Unless you'd prefer not to." "I would like that," she managed to say, her heart beating so loudly she was sure he must hear it. He smiled then, the warmth returning to his eyes. "Until Saturday, then." Saturday evening arrived with the first true chill of autumn. The town hall blazed with lantern light, and the sound of the small orchestra tuning their instruments drifted through the open doors. Martha and her mother had spent the afternoon decorating with harvest colors, amber, russet, and gold bunting draped from the rafters, while tables around the perimeter held baskets of apples and late-blooming flowers. "You should go change now, dear," her mother said as they finished arranging the refreshment table. "Your new dress is wrapped on your bed." "New dress? But I haven't made." "I made it," her mother interrupted, smiling. "Well, you've been busy at the Sullivan Ranch these past weeks." Upstairs in the small room they'd been given to use, Martha found a package on the narrow bed. Inside was a dress of deep copper taffeta, more elegantly styled than anything she typically wore, with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. "Mother, it's beautiful, but no arguments." "You'll wear it and do it justice," her mother insisted. The dress fit perfectly, of course. Her mother's skill with measurements was legendary in Red Rock. What surprised Martha was how the cut flattered her figure, emphasizing her small waist while the full skirt balanced her proportions. When she descended the stairs to the now crowded hall, several heads turned. Martha felt exposed, vulnerable in a way her usual serviceable dresses never left her. She hurried to the refreshment table, where her mother gave her an approving nod. "Much better than hiding in the kitchen all evening," she said. The music began, and couples took to the floor. Martha busied herself pouring cider and arranging cookies, studiously avoiding watching for James. What if he didn't come? What if he had only invited her to dance out of pity? Miss Wilson. She turned to find James standing before her, dressed in a new black suit, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. He looked so handsome it momentarily stole her breath. "Mr. Sullivan," she managed. "I believe you promised me a dance," he said, offering his hand. Acutely aware of the eyes following them, Martha allowed him to lead her onto the dance floor. The orchestra was playing a waltz, and to her surprise, James was a competent dancer, guiding her confidently through the steps. "You dance well for a rancher," she observed. "My mother insisted I learn. Said no son of hers would embarrass her at social functions." His hand was warm against her back. "You look beautiful tonight, Martha." She lowered her eyes. "Thank you for being kind." His steps faltered slightly. "Kind? Do you think I'm here out of kindness?" Before she could answer, Ruth Montgomery appeared beside them, resplendent in pale blue silk that matched her eyes. "Mr. Sullivan, you came after all," she exclaimed. "And you dance so well. You must save the next one for me." James nodded politely but didn't release Martha's hand. "Perhaps later, Miss Montgomery. I've promised this evening to Miss Wilson." Ruth's perfect features hardened momentarily before she forced a smile. "How ... Gallant of you. Another time, then." As she swept away, Martha felt a strange mixture of triumph and apprehension. "You shouldn't have done that," she murmured. "Ruth's father owns the bank. Half the businesses in town owe him money." "Including your family's shop?" James asked quietly. Martha nodded. "The mortgage has 3 years remaining." "Then perhaps I should be more diplomatic." He guided her through a turn. "But I won't pretend an interest I don't feel, regardless of who her father is." The dance ended, but instead of returning her to the refreshment table, James led her toward the doors opening onto the small town square. "Would you walk with me a moment?" he asked. "It's rather warm inside." Outside, the night air was crisp with the scent of fallen leaves. A few other couples strolled about, maintaining proper distances under the watchful eyes of chaperones. "I've been wanting to talk to you," James said as they walked slowly along the boardwalk. "About my intentions." Martha's heart skipped. "Intentions?" "These past weeks, having you at the ranch, seeing the difference you've made, not just to the house, but to my gaze." He stopped, turning to face her. "Martha, I came to Wyoming looking for a fresh start, but I never expected to find someone like you." "Someone like me?" she echoed, unable to keep the question from her voice. "Someone genuine, someone whose presence makes a house feel like a home." His eyes searched hers. "I've grown very fond of you, Martha Wilson, more than fond." Before she could respond, shouts erupted from down the street. A young ranch hand came running toward the town hall, his face pale in the lamplight. "Fire! Fire at the Sullivan Ranch," he yelled. "Rustlers hit during the dance." James tensed beside her, his expression transforming from tender to determined in an instant. "I have to go," he said, already moving toward the livery stable where his horse was boarded. "Be careful," Martha called after him, but he was already running, joined by other ranchers and several of the town's men grabbing rifles and mounting horses. Martha stood frozen as the peaceful harvest celebration dissolved into chaos around her. Her mother appeared at her side, clutching her arm. "Come inside, dear," she urged. "There's nothing we can do now but pray they all return safely." But as Martha allowed herself to be led back into the hall, she couldn't help feeling that something precious had been interrupted, perhaps forever, by the cruelty of frontier justice and greed. 3 days passed with no word from the Sullivan Ranch. Red Rock buzzed with rumors that the rustlers had been captured, that there had been a shootout, that James Sullivan himself had been wounded. Martha continued her work at the shop, her hands steady on the fabric while her thoughts remained miles away with a blue-eyed rancher who had almost declared his feelings before fate intervened. On the 4th morning, as Martha arranged a new display of winter fabrics, the shop bell jangled. She looked up to see Sheriff Davis removing his hat as he stepped inside. "Miss Wilson," he nodded. "Might I have a word?" Martha's heart plummeted. "Is it Mr. Sullivan?" "Is he?" "Alive and well, ma'am," the sheriff assured her quickly. "But asking for you. His foreman's bringing a wagon to fetch you, if you're willing." "What happened?" Martha asked, already untying her shop apron. "Rustlers torched a storage barn, but the hands saved the house and livestock. Sullivan took a bullet grazed to his shoulder, nothing serious, but he's laid up and ornery as a wet cat." Sheriff Davis smiled slightly. "Keeps asking if you're coming." With her mother's blessing, Martha gathered supplies, fresh bandages, healing salve, and a basket of food and waited anxiously for the Sullivan wagon. When it arrived, the foreman, Mr. Peterson, helped her aboard with a respectful nod. "Boss'll be mighty glad to see you, Miss Wilson. Been fretful since we brought him home." "How bad is his injury?" Martha asked as they set off. "Just a scratch, but Doc Jenkins insisted he rested proper. You know how men like the boss are, used to being in the saddle sunrise to sunset. Confinement don't sit well." The ranch came into view, the charred remains of the storage barn, a stark contrast to the undamaged main house. Martha's heart lightened to see the home they had worked on together still standing. Mr. Peterson helped her down and carried her supplies to the porch. "He's in the study. Made us move his bed down there so he could keep an eye on things," the foreman explained with a fond shake of his head. Martha entered the house, momentarily struck by how familiar it felt after her weeks of visits. The arrangements they had made together remained in place, but now a makeshift sick room occupied the study. James lay propped up with pillows on a narrow bed, his face turned toward the window, his left shoulder bandaged beneath a loose shirt. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, his expression transforming from brooding to joy so quickly it nearly took her breath away. "Martha," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You came." "Of course I came." She approached the bed, noting with concern the shadows beneath his eyes and the pallor beneath his tan. "The sheriff said you were asking for me." "Every hour since they brought me back," he admitted. "I needed to see you, to finish what I was trying to say at the dance." Martha set her basket down. That can wait until you're recovered. No, he caught her hand. It's waited too long already. Please, sit with me. She perched carefully on the edge of the bed, aware of Mr. Peterson still visible through the doorway, providing propriety to their meeting. When I came to Wyoming, James began, I had nothing but my uncle's name and a determination to build something of my own. A ranch, a business. I thought that was all I needed. His thumb traced patterns on her palm. Then I met you. Martha swallowed hard. James, let me finish, please. His blue eyes held hers. All those weeks you spent here, making this house into something warm and welcoming. I realized it wasn't just the house that was changing. It was me. I began to see possibilities I'd never considered before. What possibilities? She asked softly. A true home, a partnership, a life shared. His free hand reached up to touch her cheek. When those rustlers attacked and I rode out that night, all I could think was that I might die without telling you how I feel. Martha's eyes filled with tears. And how do you feel? I love you, Martha Wilson. Your kindness, your strength, your hands that create beauty from nothing. His voice broke slightly. I know we haven't known each other long, and I have little to offer but a damaged ranch and a life of hard work. But, yes, she interrupted, tears spilling onto her cheeks. James blinked. Yes, I haven't asked anything yet. Martha laughed through her tears. Then ask me properly, James Sullivan. He smiled, that same half-smile that had first caught her attention in her mother's shop. Martha Wilson, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? Of making this house our home, of building a life together on this land? Yes, she said again, her heart so full she could barely breathe. Yes, I will. James pulled her gently toward him, mindful of his injured shoulder, and kissed her. It was a tender kiss, full of promise and certainty. When they parted, Martha asked, What about the rustlers? Captured and in jail in Cheyenne, he replied. Sheriff Davis and the posse tracked them through the night. The damage to the barn is repairable. Everything that matters is still here. 2 weeks later, Martha stood in her mother's shop before a mirror, hardly recognizing the woman reflected there. She wore a simple wedding dress of ivory satin, its elegant lines a testament to her mother's skill and understanding of her daughter's figure. You look beautiful, her mother said, adjusting the small wreath of late autumn flowers in Martha's hair. Every inch a bride. The small church in Red Rock was filled to capacity, curious townsfolk mingling with James's ranch hands and business associates. Ruth Montgomery sat stiffly in a back pew beside her father, her expression sour despite her elaborate new hat. When Martha entered on her father's arm, she had eyes only for James, standing tall and handsome at the altar, his injured arm barely showing any stiffness beneath his new suit. His face as she approached held such naked adoration that whispers rippled through the congregation. The ceremony was brief, the traditional words binding them together before God and their community. When the minister declared them husband and wife, James lifted her veil with gentle hands. Perfect, he whispered, before kissing her to the sound of applause. The reception at the town hall was a simpler version of the harvest dance where their courtship had nearly been declared. Martha moved through it in a haze of happiness, scarcely noticing the speculative glances and hushed conversations that followed them. It was only when Mrs. Henderson approached, her sharp eyes assessing Martha's wedding finery, that reality intruded briefly on her joy. Well, Martha, who would have thought a girl of your proportions would catch the most eligible bachelor in the county? She remarked with a thin smile. Mr. Sullivan must be a very understanding man. Before Martha could respond, James appeared at her side, his arm sliding protectively around her waist. Not understanding, Mrs. Henderson, he corrected pleasantly. Discerning. It takes a man of vision to recognize true beauty when others miss it entirely. He smiled down at Martha. I'm the fortunate one in this marriage, make no mistake. As Mrs. Henderson retreated, thoroughly chastened, Martha leaned into her husband's strength. Thank you, she murmured, for speaking the truth. James shook his head. No need for thanks between us ever. Only honesty and love. As evening fell, They departed for the ranch, their home now, truly. The house glowed with lamplight as they approached, and James insisted on carrying Martha over the threshold despite his still healing shoulder. Inside, the rooms they had arranged together over those autumn weeks welcomed them with familiar comfort. James set her gently on her feet in the parlor, his hands lingering at her waist. "Welcome home, Mrs. Sullivan," he said softly. Martha reached up to touch his face, the reality of their marriage still wonderfully new. "I never thought I'd have this," she admitted. "A man who sees me, not just my size or my usefulness." "I see all of you," James replied, drawing her closer. "Your generous heart, your clever mind, your beautiful body, every part precious to me." Later, as moonlight spilled through the bedroom window, James had once prepared for guests and now shared with his bride. Martha lay in the circle of his arms, marveling at the journey that had brought her here. "What are you thinking?" James asked drowsily, his fingers trailing along her bare shoulder. "That sometimes life surprises you," she replied. "That sometimes what others mock as imperfection is exactly what someone else has been searching for all along." "Not imperfection," James corrected, kissing her forehead. "Just a different kind of perfect. My kind of perfect." Martha smiled in the darkness, finally home in the place she was always meant to be. Loved not despite who she was, but because of it.